Ethan's shuttle descended through the purple clouds of Zythera, its metallic hull humming against the turbulent atmosphere. The planet's surface was a swirl of towering crystal formations and glowing rivers, the likes of which no human had ever fully mapped. He had traveled thousands of light years to reach this place. But the urgency of his mission left no room for awe. Orders from the Interstellar Council were clear. Locate Princess Lysera immediately, and deliver critical intelligence about a growing threat to her kingdom. The palace rose in the distance like a shard of light, sharp edges reflecting the planet's luminescent landscape. Despite its intimidating height and alien design, Ethan felt no fear, only focus. Years of training, exploration, and dealing with unexpected dangers had prepared him for moments like this. He landed the shuttle in a small clearing near the palace gates, the ground vibrating lightly under the craft's weight. As he approached, the air grew heavy with an unfamiliar energy. Zythera's atmosphere carried a faint electrical charge, and the palace itself seemed almost alive, responding subtly to his presence. Ethan adjusted the small device on his wrist, a scanner designed to read the energy patterns of the building. The readings were unusual, something inside was hiding, or perhaps protecting itself. He narrowed his eyes, sensing the layers of complexity he would need to navigate. The doors to the palace were massive, carved from a shimmering mineral that reflected his determined face. When they opened silently at his approach, Ethan stepped inside, careful to keep his posture calm and non-threatening. Every step echoed through the grand hallway, lined with tall crystal columns and flowing streams of colored liquid suspended in mid-air. The palace was unlike anything he had ever encountered. He paused at a corner, listening. Silence, then a soft sound of movement. Light and hesitant, coming from one of the upper chambers. Ethan recognized instinctively that it was Lysera, the princess herself. He could sense her presence, the energy of someone unarmed yet alert, someone both powerful and vulnerable. The instructions he had been given stressed caution. She was to be approached carefully. No sudden actions, no arrogance. Humanity's first impression here mattered. Ethan ascended the stairs, each step deliberate, his mind racing with calculations of protocol and approach. The corridor at the top was quiet, almost sterile. Except for a faint hum of energy, he stepped into the doorway and froze, not because of fear, but because of the sight before him. Princess Lysera was standing in the center of the room, uncovered, her hair cascading over her shoulders like a river of light. Her shock was immediate, evident in the way her eyes widened and her body stiffened. For a brief moment, the palace seemed to shrink around them, the distance between human and alien reduced to a heartbeat. Ethan's training kicked in instantly. He dropped his gaze, raising a hand in a gesture of respect and apology. "I am sorry," he said, his voice steady but calm. "I did not intend to intrude." Lysera's shock slowly gave way to scrutiny. She was not the kind of person to panic for long, even when surprised. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, assessed every detail of Ethan's appearance. The simplicity of his uniform, the calm control of his stance, and the steady pulse of someone who had faced danger before. "I should have been informed," she said softly, though there was no anger in her tone, only curiosity. "You are human. Why have you come? Why have you come?" Ethan bowed slightly, a gesture of humility he had learned often transcended language and culture. "Princess Lysera, my people have observed a threat approaching your kingdom. I have knowledge that could prevent great harm. The Council has sent me to ensure your safety and the safety of your people." Lysera's gaze softened slightly, though a flicker of doubt remained. Humans were known across the galaxy, but their abilities were often underestimated. She had heard tales of human bravery, but direct experience was rare. She studied him carefully, trying to determine if he was more than the stories suggested. "Very well," she said after a moment, stepping back to allow him closer. "Speak. But understand this. My kingdom does not tolerate weakness or delay. If this threat is, as you say, you must prove your value quickly." Ethan nodded, relieved that she was willing to listen. "I will do my best. But first, I must understand your defenses, your current situation, and any vulnerabilities that could be exploited by your enemies. Knowledge is our first weapon." Lizera tilted her head, considering. Her people were proud and secretive, and she had little patience for outsiders meddling in palace affairs. Yet, there was something about Ethan, something unshakable and calm that made her hesitate. "Follow me," she said finally, moving toward a sleek control chamber in the corner of the room. The walls were lined with holographic panels displaying maps, energy flows, and security systems that defied immediate comprehension. As they walked, Ethan absorbed every detail. The palace was more than a residence, it was a fortress, alive with systems that adapted to both threats and inhabitants. He admired the complexity while silently noting points where human ingenuity could complement the alien technology. In the control chamber, Lizera gestured to a large holographic display showing the borders of her kingdom. Ethan leaned forward, scanning the data. The threat she faced was a coalition of rogue factions, skilled in espionage and sabotage, moving swiftly across the outer territories. The Council had detected their presence early, but intelligence had gaps. That was where Ethan's knowledge came in. He had tools and methods for prediction that the aliens had not yet perfected. Lizera watched as he analyzed the situation, noting the speed and clarity of his reasoning. Her initial shock faded entirely, replaced by interest, and perhaps a hint of admiration. Humans were often underestimated, yet here was one demonstrating calmness, intelligence, and a willingness to serve without expectation. "I see," she said quietly, leaning over the display. "You are faster than our sensors, but not reckless. Perhaps there is more to your people than the Council allowed me to believe." Ethan kept his focus on the maps, but a small, respectful smile tugged at his lips. Humans have always found ways to survive, adapt, and overcome. We may not have your technology, but our minds can compensate. Together, we can anticipate this threat and neutralize it before it reaches your palace. Lizera studied him silently. The room was charged with unspoken tension, mutual assessment, recognition of capability, and the fragile beginnings of trust. The alien princess, poised and proud, realized that this human could not be dismissed as a simple messenger. His calm courage hinted at a strength that could change the course of the coming conflict. After a long pause, she turned back to the display. "Very well," she said. "You will assist me, but understand this. I will not tolerate failure. The lives of my people depend on our actions in the next hours." Ethan nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle comfortably on his shoulders. He had faced life-threatening challenges before, but never with the stakes so high and the consequences so personal. The fate of an entire civilization rested on human hands, and he was determined to prove that humans were capable of far more than anyone imagined. As the first shadows of Zythera's evening began to stretch across the palace halls, Ethan and Lizera moved deeper into strategy, planning their next steps. Each word, each movement, built a bridge of trust between species, showing that courage and intelligence could transcend difference. The initial shock of her exposure, the vulnerability she had felt, was now replaced with careful attention and growing respect. Lizera's mind, sharp and unyielding, recognized that she might have underestimated the human spirit. And Ethan, ever observant, understood that first impressions could shift entire destinies when courage and intellect met opportunity. Outside the palace, the wind whispered across crystalline towers, carrying hints of danger yet unseen. Inside, two figures, one human, one alien, prepared to face that danger together, forming a partnership that could alter the balance of the galaxy. The night was only beginning, but already the spark of alliance had been lit, promising action, tension, and the kind of trust that only comes from shared peril and mutual respect. And as Ethan studied the holographic maps and Lizera refined her palace defenses, neither could fully predict how this collaboration would change the fate of Zythera and perhaps the galaxy itself. But one thing was certain. Humans were no longer outsiders in the eyes of the princess. and her initial shock had become the first step toward understanding a force far greater than she had imagined. The palace halls were quiet now, the earlier tension giving way to focused preparation. Ethan followed Lysra through corridors that twisted and curved in ways humans rarely designed. The walls shimmered faintly, responding to her touch. Almost like the palace itself recognized its princess. Ethan could feel the subtle energy flowing around them, alive yet controlled. Every step they took was a lesson in alien architecture. Each turn a reminder that this world operated on principles far beyond human understanding. Lysra moved with purpose, her mind already racing through strategies. "We cannot rely on brute force alone," she said softly, glancing at Ethan. "Our enemies are skilled at infiltration. They know the palace well, and they are patient. They will strike where we least expect it." Ethan nodded, analyzing the patterns displayed on a small portable hologram he had activated. "Infiltrators often exploit predictable defenses," he said. "Their attacks will be calculated, but there are always variables we can use to our advantage. Humans are good at adapting on the fly. That may be our edge." Lysra studied him carefully. She had been trained to lead, to command, and to make quick decisions in crises, yet there was something different about this human. He did not rely solely on instinct or orders. He analyzed, predicted, and adjusted with calm precision. It was a skill that set humans apart in subtle but powerful ways. They reached a command chamber at the heart of the palace. The walls pulsed faintly with energy, and floating panels displayed live information about the palace's security systems, outer defenses, and approaching threats. Lysra gestured for Ethan to join her. "Show me what you propose," she said, her tone blending curiosity with cautious authority. Ethan studied the projections. "There are 3 possible points of entry the intruders could use," he said, pointing to sections of the palace that even Lysra had not considered vulnerable. 2 are heavily guarded but predictable. The third is less obvious, an old service route that still connects to the outer perimeter. If they use it, they could bypass our main defenses. I recommend a combination of monitoring and countermeasures there." Lysra raised an eyebrow. "You know our palace better than you have been here?" "I rely on logic, patterns, and observation," Ethan replied. "The palace responds to energy and movement. We can anticipate behaviors, even if we do not fully understand every system. We just need to focus on responses rather than assumptions." Lysra nodded slowly, impressed despite herself. She had underestimated humans, assuming they were clever but limited in scope. Ethan had already challenged that perception. His calm confidence and insight revealed a kind of intelligence that could complement her own command. They divided the tasks. Ethan moved to the service tunnels he had identified, placing sensors and improvised traps to alert them of any intrusion. He worked quickly, carefully adjusting alien technology to respond to subtle energy fluctuations. Though unfamiliar, he adapted swiftly, guided by human ingenuity. Meanwhile, Lysra coordinated the palace guards, reinforcing key positions and issuing silent commands to her aides. She was meticulous and precise, yet she occasionally glanced toward Ethan, noting the efficiency with which he handled systems that had taken her people years to master. It was a quiet acknowledgement of respect, small but significant. As night fell over Zythera, the palace seemed to hum with a quiet anticipation. Outside, the crystalline towers reflected the twin moons, their light casting shifting patterns across the landscape. Inside, Ethan moved through narrow corridors and energy gates, checking his devices. Every sensor and alarm was tested, calibrated, and ready. He had learned that preparation was often the difference between survival and catastrophe. Hours passed without incident, but the tension never eased. Ethan could feel it in the energy of the palace, in Lysra's movements, and in the subtle hum of the walls. Then, faintly, a disturbance almost imperceptible rippled through the energy grids he had monitored. His eyes narrowed. Something was moving where it should not have been. He moved swiftly, signaling Lysra through a secure channel. "I detect movement near the secondary gate. It is subtle, but deliberate." They are testing our defenses. Lysera responded immediately, her voice calm but firm. Divert the sensors. Draw them into the outer corridors. I will handle the guards and prepare countermeasures. Ethan executed the plan, manipulating energy fields and adjusting the palace's hidden mechanisms to create a controlled path. A shadow moved through the outer corridors, and he tracked it meticulously, feeding Lysera real-time updates. The intruders were skilled, but humans excelled in improvisation, and Ethan's adaptations were precise. The shadow reached a section of the palace lined with delicate crystal structures. Ethan paused, studying the path. A wrong step could trigger alarms, alerting the intruders to the full extent of their exposure. But with careful timing, he redirected their path toward an ambush he had prepared with Lysera's guards. Lysera emerged from a side corridor, leading her elite protectors. Now, she whispered, and the intruders fell into the trap. What followed was swift but controlled. The palace's defensive systems activated, not lethally, but effectively immobilizing the intruders. Lysera moved gracefully among her guards, ensuring no harm came to anyone while maintaining authority. Ethan's strategic placement of sensors had been perfect. Every intruder was contained before they could reach critical areas. As the last intruder was secured, Lysera turned to Ethan, her eyes wide with respect. You did more than assist, she said quietly. You anticipated, adapted, and executed. Humans may have been underestimated, but I will not make that mistake again. Ethan allowed a small, respectful smile. We all have our strengths. Yours is leadership. Mine is observation and improvisation. Together, we make a stronger defense than either could alone. Lysera considered this. Her initial impression of humans as unpredictable or limited had been challenged and reshaped. Here was one who combined calm courage with intelligence and adaptability. It was rare, so rare, that it commanded recognition and trust. They returned to the command chamber, reviewing the aftermath. Ethan pointed out potential weaknesses the intruders had revealed in their probe, and Lysera adjusted her defensive plans accordingly. Each modification strengthened the palace, blending human intuition with alien technology. You are fast to learn, Lysera remarked, watching Ethan manipulate the complex systems with ease. And precise. I admit, I expected you to struggle with even basic functions of our defenses. Ethan shook his head. We have learned that improvisation is often stronger than rigid procedure. Observation, adaptation, and calm judgment are key. That is why humans survive. Because we can think in ways others do not anticipate. Lysera's lips curved into a slight smile, one reserved for moments of genuine admiration. Perhaps your people are not as limited as the Council describes. I see potential, and perhaps a new understanding of what it means to be an ally. As the hours passed, they continued to reinforce defenses and prepare for potential attacks. Outside, the twin moons of Zythera cast a serene glow, masking the hidden dangers creeping through the dark landscapes. Inside, a human and an alien princess worked side by side, blending intuition, strategy, and skill. Trust was forming fragile, yet significant. By the end of the night, the palace was secure, at least for the moment. Lysera and Ethan stood on a balcony, observing the alien terrain stretching endlessly below. She remained cautious, but her respect for the human beside her had grown. He had proven more than capable, and she realized that human ingenuity could become a decisive force in the challenges ahead. Tomorrow, the threat will return, Lysera said softly, her voice almost lost in the night wind. But with your insight, and my people, we will meet it prepared. I trust you, Ethan. Though trust is not easily given. Ethan nodded, sensing the significance of her words. I will not let that trust be misplaced. Together, we can face whatever comes. Humans and aliens can achieve more when we combine our strengths, rather than underestimate each other. For a moment, silence stretched between them, filled, not with tension, but with mutual understanding. The night was calm, yet both were aware that peace was temporary. Danger would come again, testing the alliance they had begun to forge. Still, in this moment, there was a quiet victory. A demonstration that humans were not only capable of surviving in alien worlds, but could shape outcomes through intelligence, courage, and adaptability. Lysera's initial shock had evolved into curiosity and respect, and the partnership with Ethan promised to become something far greater than a simple alliance. As they stepped back inside, readying for the challenges that lay ahead, both knew that tomorrow would demand more of them, more strategy, more courage, and more trust. But for now, a human had proven himself worthy in the eyes of an alien princess, and the first step of a remarkable collaboration had been taken. The palace was quiet again, but the bond formed in the darkness between human and princess would echo through the halls and into the trials yet to come. And for the first time, Lysera allowed herself to consider the possibilities. Possibilities that included humans as allies, equals, and perhaps something even more significant in the days ahead. The first light of Zythera's twin suns broke across the crystalline towers, casting long, fractured shadows that danced across the palace walls. Ethan and Lysera stood together in the command chamber, reviewing the palace defenses and the intelligence gathered overnight. The calm of the morning belied the tension in their minds. Tonight had only been a warning. The real threat was still out there, moving closer with purpose and precision. Ethan pointed to the map projections hovering in the air. The intruders were a small scouting team. They tested our defenses but didn't strike for real. Their main force will arrive soon, and they'll come prepared for any traps we set. Lysera's eyes narrowed. We cannot afford a full assault in the outer corridors. The palace must remain intact, or our people could suffer. She turned to her staff. Prepare emergency shields around the key chambers. I want the palace ready to withstand anything, without unnecessary loss. Ethan moved through the chamber, observing the energy flows and adjusting his improvised human modifications. We can use the palace's own energy to guide their movement, he explained. If we control the path, we control the engagement. The intruders will not know which way to turn, and we can protect civilians while isolating the attackers. Lysera studied him, impressed by his clarity. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but in ways that often gave them an advantage. Their ability to think outside rigid procedures complemented her own experience and training. Your strategy is unconventional, she admitted, but I see its logic. We will follow it. As the day progressed, the palace grew tense with quiet anticipation. Guards patrolled in shifting patterns, invisible sensors tracked every fluctuation of energy, and Ethan moved through the halls, checking the devices he had set the night before. He tested each sensor, recalibrated the traps, and ensured that every possible route of intrusion was accounted for. Lysera joined him briefly in one corridor, her presence calm yet commanding. Humans are said to rely on improvisation, but I am beginning to see its strength, she said quietly. Your people may survive against threats that we would consider overwhelming. Ethan smiled faintly. We survive because we adapt. We use what we have, think quickly, and refuse to give up. It is not strength alone. It is ingenuity, patience, and courage that make the difference. The afternoon passed without incident, but as evening approached, the energy readings changed subtly. Ethan's devices registered the faint signatures of approaching ships beyond the palace perimeter. He turned to Lysera. They are here. The main force is moving in, and they know our patterns. Their intelligence is advanced, they won't be easily surprised. Lysera's expression hardened. Then we must be smarter. Place the traps in layers. Make them see what we want them to see, and nowhere else. Ethan moved swiftly, adjusting the palace energy flows to guide the invaders along a predetermined path. Each corridor, each junction, became part of a controlled environment where human strategy would turn their strength against them. Lysera coordinated her guards with equal precision, their movements seamless, synchronized, and deadly in potential, yet careful to avoid unnecessary harm. When the first intruders entered the outer corridors, Ethan's modifications took effect. Doors sealed, energy fields shifted, and subtle changes in lighting and sound guided the invaders into positions where they could be neutralized. The aliens were skilled and swift, but humans excelled in improvisation. Ethan's guidance allowed Lysera's team to intercept each wave efficiently, isolating threats without panic or confusion. Lysera moved alongside her guards, her focus absolute. "Do not underestimate them," she said. "Observe, adapt, and respond. That is how we survive." Ethan observed quietly, noting patterns in the intruders' movements. They were clever, but predictable in their reactions to the energy flows he had manipulated. Small errors, small miscalculations, amplified by human foresight, created openings. Lysera and her team exploited these with precision, capturing intruders and securing areas of the palace that were critical to maintaining defense. Hours passed in a tense rhythm of observation and action. Each encounter tested the palace, the guards, and the strategies of both humans and aliens. Ethan remained calm, adjusting his modifications in real time, while Lysera's command ensured that the palace's defenses were unbroken. The two worked together seamlessly, human ingenuity and alien leadership, blending into an effective force that neither species could achieve alone. Finally, a larger group of intruders advanced through one of the main corridors. Ethan's sensors alerted him immediately. He moved to the control console, adjusting energy flows to redirect them. "They're coming faster than expected," he said, his voice steady but firm. "We need to slow them down before they reach the central chamber." Lysera's eyes gleamed with determination. "Then we will slow them together. I trust your judgment." The intruders entered the manipulated corridor and fell into the traps Ethan had prepared. Energy fields slowed their movement. Doors redirected them, and subtle shifts in sound and light created confusion. Lysera's guards intercepted them efficiently, neutralizing threats without lethal force. The attackers were skilled, but they were outmatched by a combination of strategy, human foresight, and precise coordination. In the midst of the chaos, Ethan moved quickly to support the guards, using his knowledge of alien technology to disable energy shields and bypass locks that the intruders might exploit. He acted decisively, each action calculated to minimize risk and maximize control. Lysera noticed the humans' confidence under pressure, an unshakable calm that inspired her guards and strengthened her own resolve. When the last of the intruders had been contained, Lysera and Ethan stood together in the central chamber, the palace quiet once more. The energy field stabilized, and the faint hum of the palace's systems returned to a steady rhythm. "You have proven your value beyond doubt," Lysera said quietly, her tone carrying respect and admiration. "Your people are resourceful, brave, and adaptable. I underestimated you, and I will not make that mistake again." Ethan shook his head. "We all have strengths. Yours is leadership, strategy, and foresight. Mine is observation, adaptation, and improvisation. Together, we have protected your people and ensured the palace remains secure." Lysera's lips curved into a faint, thoughtful smile. "Perhaps humans are more capable than the council described. Perhaps there is more to our alliance than I realized." Ethan glanced at her, understanding the significance of her words. The night had tested them both, revealing not only the intruders' intentions but also the potential of collaboration between species. Human courage, combined with alien knowledge, had achieved what neither could alone. The hours passed into early morning, and the palace remained secure. Ethan monitored energy flows and adjusted traps one last time, ensuring that any remaining intruders could not regroup. Lysera moved through the halls, checking on her guards and calming any fears that lingered from the night's encounters. By dawn, a sense of cautious victory filled the palace. The main threat had been delayed, and the collaboration between human and alien had proven effective. Lysera stood with Ethan on a balcony, observing the first light reflecting off Zythera's crystalline towers. "You have changed my perspective," she said softly. "Humans are not weak, reckless, or limited. You think differently, act decisively, and inspire confidence. I will remember this night." Ethan nodded, feeling the quiet satisfaction of a mission accomplished. "We survived because we adapted and worked together. That is what humans do. We do not give up. We observe, and we act when necessary. That is our strength. Lysera's gaze lingered on him, a mixture of respect, curiosity, and cautious admiration. Tomorrow, the threat may return, stronger and more prepared. But now I know we are ready. With your help, we can meet any challenge. Ethan glanced at the palace below, noting the stillness and subtle energy flows. Preparation and adaptability will keep us one step ahead. Humans can surprise even the most calculated minds. For a moment, silence settled between them, filled not with tension but with understanding. The night had been a test, a demonstration of skill, courage, and trust. The human had proven himself capable, not only in action but in judgment, improvisation, and strategic thinking. Lysera's perception of humanity had changed forever. The palace breathed with quiet energy, and the bond between the human and the alien princess had strengthened. They had faced the first real challenge together and emerged victorious, their trust in each other deepening with every decision, every maneuver, and every calculated risk. Ethan adjusted his sensors one final time, satisfied that the palace was secure for now. Lysera observed him, recognizing that this human was not only skilled but also calm in ways that inspired confidence. Together, they represented the potential of two species working in harmony, their combined abilities surpassing what either could achieve alone. As Zythera's suns climbed higher in the sky, casting golden light across the crystalline towers, Ethan and Lysera returned to the command chamber. Their minds were already focused on the next steps, aware that the challenges ahead would be greater and more dangerous. But they were ready, prepared through strategy, courage, and a bond formed in the fires of adversity. The palace was quiet once more, but the echoes of the night's events lingered in the minds of both human and alien. Trust had been earned, skill had been proven, and respect had been forged. The galaxy beyond Zythera awaited. But for now, the alliance between Ethan and Lysera was unshakable. A partnership born of necessity, intelligence, and shared courage. And as they prepared for the coming trials, both understood a truth that could shape the fate of their worlds. Humans were not just survivors, they were thinkers, adapters, and allies capable of changing outcomes in ways the galaxy had yet to witness. Night fell over Zythera once more, the twin moons casting a soft silver light across the crystalline towers. The palace hummed with quiet energy, every corridor and chamber alive with systems quietly waiting, anticipating the inevitable confrontation. Ethan and Lysera stood in the command chamber, reviewing the intelligence gathered over the past days. They had prepared as much as possible, but both understood that nothing could fully predict the cunning and determination of the intruders. "They are coming," Ethan said calmly, his eyes fixed on the holographic display. "Their main force is larger than what we faced before. They have learned from the earlier attempt. They will strike with full coordination, and they will test every weakness we have." Lysera nodded, her expression focused and determined. "Then we must be ready to adapt as they adapt. Our strength lies not just in our defenses, but in our ability to think and act quickly. I trust you, Ethan, and together we will face whatever comes." Ethan adjusted the energy flows, carefully synchronizing his human-modified systems with the palace's natural defenses. Every door, corridor, and chamber became part of a controlled network, guiding the intruders through paths they could not anticipate. While Lysera's guards prepared to intercept at strategic points, as the first ships of the intruders descended beyond the palace perimeter, Ethan monitored their approach. "They are advancing faster than predicted. Our window to act is short. Once they reach the outer walls, we must force them into the corridors we have prepared." Lysera's voice was steady and commanding. "Activate the traps. Channel them where we want. Remember, no unnecessary harm. We protect our people first." The intruders landed with precision, quickly splitting into multiple squads. Ethan's modifications triggered subtle shifts in lighting, sound, and energy patterns, guiding the invaders along paths designed to isolate them from one another. Each movement was calculated, turning the palace itself into a living defensive mechanism. Lysera moved among her guards with unmatched grace, issuing quiet but firm commands. Hold your positions. Observe. Adapt. Strike only when the moment is right. The first confrontation occurred in the outer corridors. Intruders were met with controlled energy fields and guided into containment zones. Their attempts to bypass defenses thwarted by Ethan's modifications. Lysera's guards intercepted them efficiently, neutralizing the threat without unnecessary aggression. Ethan monitored every detail, adjusting systems in real time. He anticipated their moves, countering their strategies before they could react. His calm under pressure inspired the guards, and even Lysera could not help but admire the humans' ability to adapt so quickly to alien technology. Hours passed in a tense rhythm of action and strategy. The intruders attempted multiple feints and diversions, but Ethan and Lysera were always one step ahead. Human improvisation and alien foresight worked in tandem, creating a defense that was as unpredictable as it was effective. Then, a group of intruders attempted to breach the central chamber, where the most critical palace systems were located. Ethan detected the movement immediately. "They're trying to reach the core," he warned. "We cannot let them compromise the palace's energy systems. If they succeed, everything we've prepared will fail." Lysera's eyes hardened. "Then we will stop them together. Lead the defense, Ethan. I will coordinate the guards." They moved swiftly, side by side. Ethan adjusted energy flows, sealed corridors, and rerouted the intruders into containment areas, while Lysera led her elite guards in precise, controlled maneuvers. The attackers were skilled, but they had not faced a human who could think so rapidly in combination with an alien leader who anticipated every move. In the chaos, Ethan noticed a small group attempting to bypass all defenses by exploiting an old service passage. He acted immediately, using a combination of alien technology and human ingenuity to block their path and redirect them into a trap. Lysera's guards moved in with perfect timing, ensuring the intruders were contained without harming civilians or damaging the palace. Finally, the last wave of intruders was neutralized. The palace was secure, the threat eliminated. Ethan and Lysera stood together in the command chamber, breathing but unshaken, their eyes meeting with mutual respect. The victory was complete, not because of overwhelming force, but because of strategy, adaptability, and trust between human and alien. Lysera stepped closer, her expression softened by relief and admiration. "You have done more than I could have imagined, Ethan. Your people, humans, are more capable than any report could convey. You have saved my kingdom tonight." Ethan shook his head, modest. "We saved it together. Your people are brave, skilled, and organized. I simply applied a different perspective. That is the strength of humans. We adapt, we observe, and we act when needed. But we could not have succeeded without your leadership." Lysera's lips curved into a small, thoughtful smile. "Perhaps this is the beginning of a new understanding between our worlds. Humans are no longer outsiders in my eyes. Tonight has shown that together, we can achieve more than either could alone." Our work," Ethan nodded, feeling a sense of quiet satisfaction. The palace hummed with restored energy, systems functioning flawlessly. The intruders had been defeated, but the lessons of this night would endure. Humans had demonstrated courage, intelligence, and adaptability in ways that even the most advanced alien civilizations could respect. As the first light of Zythera's morning began to illuminate the palace towers, Lysera and Ethan walked to the balcony overlooking the crystalline plains. The air was crisp, filled with the faint hum of energy that permeated the planet. "Do you think they will return?" Lysera asked quietly, her eyes scanning the horizon. "Perhaps," Ethan replied, "but they will not succeed if we remain vigilant and continue to adapt. Humans survive not because we are stronger, but because we learn and change faster than our enemies anticipate. That is how we stay ahead." Lysera considered this, her expression thoughtful. "Then perhaps the galaxy has underestimated humans for too long. You have proven that courage, intelligence, and adaptability can rival even the most advanced forces. I see now that there is far more to your species than anyone suspected. Ethan glanced at her, sensing the sincerity behind her words. Humans have always had to overcome challenges, sometimes impossible ones. We survive by using our minds and hearts together, not just our strength. That is why we succeed. For a long moment, they stood in silence, the weight of the night's events settling between them. The palace was quiet, the intruders gone, yet the bond formed through struggle and trust remained. Lysera's initial shock at Ethan's presence had evolved into respect, admiration, and an understanding that humans were capable of shaping events in ways no one had predicted. "The people of my kingdom will hear of this," Lysera said finally, "and they will learn that humans are not merely visitors or messengers, they can be allies, strategists, and protectors. I will ensure that our worlds view your people differently from now on." Ethan smiled faintly. "That is all any of us can hope for. Trust, understanding, and cooperation can achieve more than any weapon or army. Humans are ready to prove it." The morning light grew stronger, bathing the palace in warmth and clarity. Ethan and Lysera returned inside, preparing reports, reviewing security systems, and ensuring the palace was fully protected against any future threat. Every detail mattered, every precaution was considered, and the alliance between human and alien had been solidified through action. By midday, the palace was calm, the immediate danger past. Ethan walked through the corridors, observing the staff and guards resuming their routines. The people of Zythera had survived a night of peril, their trust in human allies strengthened by what had been achieved. Lysera followed, her expression both thoughtful and resolute. She had seen humans in action now, witnessed their courage, their intelligence, and their ability to adapt under pressure. What had begun as surprise and caution had evolved into respect and a recognition of potential that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. "Ethan," she said quietly as they reached the central chamber, "tonight has proven that strength is not always measured in force or technology. It is measured in courage, intelligence, and the ability to act decisively when it matters most. You have shown me that humans possess all of these qualities." Ethan nodded, feeling the weight and honor of her acknowledgement. "We all do. When the time comes, and when we work together, there is no challenge too great, no threat too clever, and no obstacle insurmountable." Lysera's gaze softened. "Perhaps this is the beginning of a new era, for humans and for my people. An era where we recognize the value of cooperation, trust, and mutual respect." Ethan looked out at the horizon once more, the crystalline plains stretching endlessly. The galaxy was vast, full of dangers and unknowns, but he felt a quiet confidence. Humans had proven themselves capable, not only of surviving but of shaping outcomes. The bond he had formed with Lysera symbolized a new understanding, a recognition that courage, intellect, and adaptability were universal strengths, not confined to any one species. As they stood together, preparing to address the council and share their report, Ethan knew that this night would be remembered not just as a victory, but as a turning point. Humans were no longer underestimated. They had earned respect, forged alliances, and demonstrated that even in an alien world, their potential was limitless. Lysera placed a hand lightly on his arm, a gesture of trust and acknowledgement. "You have changed the way I see your people, Ethan, and I believe the galaxy will never forget it." Ethan smiled, feeling a sense of fulfillment deeper than any he had experienced on previous missions. "Then let us make sure this is only the beginning." The palace of Zythera stood secure, its energy systems humming quietly in the morning light. Outside, the crystalline towers reflected the sun, a symbol of resilience and hope. Within, a human and an alien princess had proven that courage, intelligence, and trust could overcome even the most daunting threats. And together, they looked toward the future, ready to face whatever challenges awaited, confident that humanity's place in the galaxy was no longer in doubt.